So now we want to start talking about lights. And I went in and I changed this out and I put another storefront in here so that I have a retail district. And I don't know if I mentioned this, but you can look for building facade, FACADE, or you can do building texture. And again, there are websites too that you can go to that have these. Or you can take your own and crop them out. And so you get all kinds of buildings that people have already taken and cut out for you to use. So there's a lot in there, a lot of options. So I just changed out this one to make it a store, since they're all stores. Yeah, I like that better. And you can see I now have this really cool urban retail center, and that can be the backdrop to my scene. Okay, the next thing we want to be able to do is work on the lighting, because lighting in this case is going to give us even more depth to what we have. All right, so that's our scene. I would go in. Let's see. Go back in. I brought this over. And background blur. Maybe I don't want quite that much. Let's drag that down. There we go. That's good. I like that. That's what I'm going to go with. Okay. So what I'm going to do is come over here on my side, and I'm under my Create tab, and I'm going to come down to Lights. So it's the third one from the left. And the default is photometric. You want to pull that down and go to the bottom and get Arnold. And Arnold Lights and Arnold Materials work together, but the others don't. So you want to make sure you're working with those Arnold Lights, or actually Arnold Light. There is one light. This is the great thing about Arnold. In order for the Arnold Materials to work properly, you want to work with the Arnold Light. Okay, so there's one, so you click on it, and then it gives you all the parameters. And I'm going to place this one in this scene, right here in the middle. And then I'm going to pick it up off the ground, because I want it to illuminate my scene like about that. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to do is go to my Modify tab, and I'm going to come down to, so it's on, you can turn it off, but I'm going to close that. And this is where I want to start with shape. Okay, so I've put this in here, and just to show you the default, I'm going to render that out. Oops, wrong scene. I do that a lot, and I apologize. It's just one of those things, I just don't see the yellow for some reason when I'm working. Okay, there we go. So now I've put a light in here, and it's already made a huge difference. It looks more three-dimensional. I didn't model any of that, but it looks like I did. Just by putting the light in there, it now starts to create shadows where there aren't any. Pretty impressive, right? I've been working with 3D Studio Max since 1999. Okay? So back then, it didn't do all this. If you wanted that, you had to model it, or you had to do a lot of really complicated things. So they made the program so much easier to use. I'm happy with that. I would use that. I mean, I'm good with that. However, there's more, so let me show you. Okay, so I've selected my light, and the default that it brings in is quad, I believe, and the quad light looks like this. But as you go through each one of these, point, distant, spot, it serves a different function, and you can see how it changes, right? So as you go through, and I'm going to recommend that you do this. You go through and then render each one out and see what it does. It shows you have different things that you can do with the light. Okay. Let me see something real quick. Okay, never mind. So you have all these different lights that do different things. You even have sky dome and mesh. So let's go to, I was using a point light, and that worked for me because it acts like the sun. And that's what I wanted because I'm outside. You can say, okay, so let me show you what happens. By default, these two are off. If you say light shape visible, when I check that box, I should be able to see the light. The light is not visible. Yep, you see I can see it now? So if you're working on something and you want to use a light as you want to be able to see it like you're using it as the sun or as a light bulb or something like that, you can check that box and it will show you the light. Okay? I'm going to turn it off because I don't want to see it in this case. And I'm going to leave it as point because it's outside. Color. So that's kind of a cool time of the day. Let's kind of warm this up a little bit. Let's pretend we're closer to the evening. Okay. So I've now given it a warmer shade to it. Yeah, I like that better. It's warmed up. It now feels like it's because it also matches the photo. The photo is taken towards the end of the day. So I matched my lighting to my background. The next thing you can control down here, you also have a filter color you can use. There are presets here. Let me discuss this very quickly. This is more advanced and we're not going to use this unless you know exactly the light bulb. I just kind of use a rough estimate of the color, but you can use on the scale of lighting, you can use specific light bulbs. You can tell it incandescent, fluorescent, right? In this case, I'm outside. I know what I want. I'm going to use my color. Okay, and then below that, we have intensity. So intensity is how bright the light is. This default worked fine for me. Most of the time, it will not work fine. Most of the time, you'll set it up and it'll be too dark. So what you'll need to do is start increasing these numbers. These numbers are modifiers of the light. They're not a 1-to-1 ratio, and it's just kind of one of those things that is experiential. As you play with it, you'll see what it does. What you want to look at is this resolution, or the resultant intensity down here. This number tells you how bright your scene is. Okay, so the exposure multiplies the intensity. So normally what I do is I first try increasing my intensity if I don't like it. At 1, say it's too dark, I just increase it just a little bit, and then, whoops, just make sure I'm the right one, and then give it a test run to see how that worked. I start by increasing the intensity first, and then the exposure second. And I think you can go up to 64 and 64 or 128, 128 in both of these before you tap out. But rather than do that, in most cases, you're going to want to add more light or more lights. So I've got one light in here. If I'm starting to get to where, say I've got this set at 12 and this set at 12, and it's not working very well, now I want to start putting in more lights. And this becomes one of those things that you learn by doing. Because at the end of the day, the materials you used, the models you've created, the lights themselves, they all have an influence on the final outcome. And so what I would say is set up one light in a scene that you're working on, render it out, see what it does, and then start making some adjustments over here with that one light. Then duplicate it and see what happens with 2 lights. So for now, we're going to leave all this alone. Rendering, cast shadows. You want your lights to cast shadows unless you have multiple lights. And then some of them sometimes, if it starts doing weird things with the shadows, if you get multiple shadows, you're going to pick one light to cast the shadows and then turn off the shadows for the rest. Shadows right now here are black. You can change that. If you're doing a scene at night, you might want to change that to dark blue. I'm going to leave all those settings for now. Okay, and so this for me works. I think this is the lighting works for the scene. Everything works out great, and it's good to go. Okay, so we will continue in the next video.